This is Drew Ludwig with the quick and dirty sermon review. Last Sunday we talked about Dr. King, Black Lives Matter, and the church. Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail is a must read. Go read it now. Stop, pause the video, read it, enjoy it, drink it in. Did you know that letter was a response to criticism? Dr. King faced heavy criticism, not just from racists and segregationalists, but from people who considered themselves allies of Dr. King when he led protests in Birmingham, Alabama. They said that he went too fast. They said that he precipitated violence. They said that he was an outside agitator. And Dr. King felt compelled to respond to his criticism, not because he responded to every criticism, but because this criticism was coming from people who should have been, who said they were, his friends. So what I want to do is look at the criticisms that Black Lives Matter faces today and see if those are some of the same criticisms that Dr. King faced. Black Lives Matter is criticized for precipitating and participating in violence. And if you look at Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, you'll find that while he was not violent, there was violence that happened, mostly to him and the protesters, as a result of his disturbing the peace. Black Lives Matter does get criticized for disturbing the peace, for shutting down highways and airports and malls, and they say, how is this going to win any friends? And Dr. King did just the same thing. They shut down the town of Birmingham, Alabama to protest, and this is not disturbing peace, he argues. He argues that they are actually bringing the tension, bringing the problems that are already there but not felt by everyone to the surface, to the light, so that they can be responded to and dealt with. If you wanted to criticize the Black Lives Matter movement in comparison with Dr. King's movement, you might say that they do not preach enemy love the way that Dr. King did, and they certainly don't practice it the way that Dr. King did. And to that I say, who does? Very few people, very few movements grow to love their enemies, love their opponents, the way that Dr. King and Jesus preached. If you want to criticize Black Lives Matter for being involved in violence or for not loving their enemy as fully as Christ calls us to, you're allowed to and you're invited to, so long as you are equally committed to nonviolence, not just nonviolent protest, but nonviolent change, and that you love your enemies as much as you expect your enemies to love you. The saddest thing that I saw this week when I prepared to talk about Black Lives Matter, the church, and Dr. King was that 72% of white Christians, which actually is more than just white people in general, 72% of white Christians think that police brutality is not part of a systemic problem. 81% of black Christians believe just the opposite. We are called to be of one mind and in one accord. And to my white brothers and sisters, I have to ask, why are we not hearing what our black brothers and sisters are saying? The title of this sermon was Dr. King, Black Lives Matter, and the Church. When you read Letter from a Birmingham Jail, you'll see that with a few exceptions, which thankfully he names and praises, the church largely failed and disappointed Dr. King. The Black Lives Matter movement isn't even really looking to the church because we've fallen into some of the irrelevance that Dr. King feared, but still the church is accountable not to any movement, but to God. So we have to ask ourselves, in this struggle for justice, are we going to be sitting on the sidelines? Are we going to be critics? Or are we going to listen to those who cry out for justice and respond?